Okay, so now that we've looked at how to reconstruct our AOVs, let's look at our utility passes. And the first one that I want to look at is the normals. The normals are very useful because it allows us to do quite a lot of things with it. And just let's talk a little bit about what the normals are and where they come from. So the normals are, of course, just showing us in which direction a piece of 3D geometry is really facing. So I'm just going to put a shuffle node over here, and I'm going to take my boat, and I'm going to go, please take my normals and just put them into a channel where I can view them. Great, so my normals are now in RGBA, and now I can have a look. So that is my red channel. You can see I'm just looking at red. That is my green channel, and that is just looking at green. Blue doesn't really have much. There is a little bit, but I don't have that much. So what can I do with this? Well, very quickly, what I can do is I can use a keyer, and I can key a specific color, and I can use that as a matte. So let me show you how to do that. So let's say we have a keyer. I'm going to take my reds, or I don't even actually need to use the keyer. I can just use that as alpha. So let's just simplify that right quickly. Just put a grade node over here and take the mask input to my shuffle and change my X. Let's take that to, instead of red, let's take that to alpha. And now this is my alpha. So when I'm looking at this image over here, and just want to go a little bit down so that we can view our entire comp, I can now go to my grade node and just gain up and down everything that is red, for example. So all the light coming from this direction, or everything really coming from this direction of the shot. If I want to change that to my Y or green, let's take my green and pop it down here. And now I can do the same thing. I can use that for green. Now, that's a really powerful way to control kind of the intensity of light coming from certain directions. But there's a way more powerful tool and way that we can really use this. I'm just going to unlink here, and instead of shuffling my Y coordinates into alpha, I'm just going to reset that and take that away. And the reason, and let's just disable that. So what I can do is, as you can see, this is kind of a representation of 3D space. So I can build a very small little tool that allows me to move these colors around and to rotate them so that I can get light from a very specific angle. So I can use the color matrix tool to do that. And what you can do here with the color matrix is just to take really what you're getting here, the RGBA, and linking that to a axis. And the reason why I want to link it to an axis is because the axis is going to allow me to rotate the colors. And I'll explain to you in a second how and why that works. So I have my axis open here, and I have my color matrix open. So what I want to do is I want to assign the colors here, this matrix over here. And I want to control that using my axis. So I want to go to local matrix, specify matrix, and I want to expression link these two here so that when I rotate my axis, the colors in the color matrix will follow. So I'm going to hold down Control, select this, and just drag that in there. And this one over here, and this one over here. I'm going to do the same here. And you can see that these just kind of line up. These 3D coordinates, they just link to each other. And I'm going to unclick specify matrix. So now when I move my axis around, so let's just rotate our X, you can see that the values are propagating through here and they're going into my color matrix. So now if we look at my color matrix, instead of seeing the exact same image, I can actually go and rotate. Whoops, let's go back to axis. I can rotate my axis, just pressing up, for example. Now the colors are shifting and moving around. So this is super useful because it allows me to kind of specify the direction which the light, or you know, how the normals are being perceived by Nuke. And I can now use this again, not just to take the red and plug it into my grade as a matte, but I can take any color now and I can specify where I want the color to be. So to kind of visualize this, I want to just split this horizontally, and I want to put a another viewer over here so that we can just, whoops, not view metadata, just a different viewer, and move it over there and put this in a 3D space. Right, so there's my axis. And if I rotate this, have a look at how that is changing the color. I'll move this, do that with it. So this is kind of, imagine this as a directional light, because I can do very similar things with it. I can now take the red channel, for example, or the green channel. I can shuffle that into my alpha. So for example here, take my red and shuffle that to alpha. And I can plug it into my grade node. So let's go back here. And what I can do now, let's just put this quite bright and go to my axis. And now as I move this and rotate this, you can see that where it's actually hitting on the ship is changing. Just gain down a bit. So you can see how that's actually now giving me the ability to control a little bit more where the light is coming from. How's that? So if I want to give it a little bit more of a rim light, you can just see where that red is now. And there's no real specific way to do this except for moving this around until you find kind of what you're looking for. That's totally from the front. Just keep going. There I have a little bit of a rim light. You can see the light is just striking from behind. And there you can see before and after. Now I have this tiny bit of rim light hitting my ship. And that is because I'm using the red here as a matte to drive that. And I'm getting this kind of these little errors really, and this is just because the sampling on the render wasn't necessarily high enough. So really quickly, just put a blur node down there, just blur the alpha, and you can get rid of those. If that doesn't work, you know, well enough, if it's causing you to lose your lighting effect, you can do some other things. You can use something called a median filter as well, and that'll just average out. We'll go to alpha. That'll just average out those. Oh, it's not connected. Those little blocks over there. Those little errors. Something like that. And that really is a very, very nice way to, let me just close this panel, to control the lighting in your shot, where you don't need to re-render the whole shot. You can just very quickly go in and tweak the lighting by doing something like that. So there we go. We have a nice little rim light hitting the ship at the moment. Got a little bit of a problem over there. Maybe that won't disappear on the pre-mult. Just make this a bit bigger. I'm going to just give it a blur as well, just a very tiny little blur to fix, there we go, these little errors over here. And as you can see, this is also now what I can do is, let's say you have a sunset shot and you want to get a little bit of a warm light going in there. You can go in here and you can just make your light coming in there a little bit warmer or a little bit cooler, depending on what you want to do. So this is a really, really good way to change color on a 3D model without having to re-render it. And of course we can do the same thing for the ocean, and it's super powerful on the ocean. So let me just quickly go in here. I'm going to make myself a little bit more space. Let's paste the same setup over here. Drop that in there. Drop that over there. And there we go. So let's have a look at how that is affecting our ocean. As you can see, I'm now hitting a little bit more light in this little section here. I can go in here to my axis and I can move it around a little bit more. Let's just reset this so that we can just go back to 0. And we know I'm using the red channel to create my grade matte. So let's have a look at what that is actually giving us. It's giving me all of this, all of this. Now, the normal's also rendered in this pass, as you can see, but it doesn't really matter because we're not going to be color correcting that. Just the way this water render also included normals. So let's go to this axis and let's just rotate our ship a little bit. And really what we're looking for is, let's say we want to just introduce a little bit of warm light hitting the waves over there. Well, now we can do that, because what we're going to do is we're going to take our grade node and we're going to go in here and let's just make that nice and warm, and have a look at how the warm light is now hitting that ocean water. We can make it blue, we can give it a specific color, but we just want to maybe give it a little bit of a golden light hitting it. You know, we can do anything. It's really up to you, and that's really the creative part of where you are building the comp. But there you go. That's now a very, very efficient way of redoing lights and fixing a little bit of light. You know, there's obviously a limit to how much you can accomplish, but you can do quite a lot without actually going back into your CG package and re-rendering the entire shot by using the normals to relight certain areas. Great, so now that we've established a skeleton on which we can hang our CG render layers and break them out into separate AOVs, we have complete control over the renders, and this allows us to be creative in the next lesson. If you haven't done so already, I suggest to follow this tutorial using the supplied renders, and then open up a new comp in which you should use your own renders. You should set them up in a way which gives you complete control over each AOV. If your renders didn't include utilities such as normals or a depth map, I would suggest re-rendering if you have the time to do so. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to use the renders provided.